Hey people, it's Voice talking to you. Today, we are here to talk about a new game that is up and coming in the world of sci-fi. This time, Ostranauts. Now, what the heck is an Ostronaut? First of all, it is made by the same people who made Neo Scavenger, and if you don't know what Neo Scavenger is, please look it up. It is a fantastic post-apocalyptic survival game with a lot of personality. And this is particularly important because not only is Ostranauts made by the same developer as Neo Scavenger, but it's also set in the exact same universe and around the same time. While everybody is down on Earth, in the Neo Scavenger world, fighting off mutants and building societies underneath what they call the Ablation Cascade, the rest of the world that was off in space when the Ablation Cascade happened is cut off from them. There's no way for them to get down to Earth and vice versa. So effectively they have no idea what's happening. So they've recreated their own society in space. It is a dystopian society with a corporate rulership and limited materials where everybody lives in microgravity and is effectively immunosuppressed because, you know, they get no sunlight, no exercise, no gravity. You get the idea. The world of Ostranauts is a bit bleak, but I can also tell you that it's not going to be your typical survival game. If you'd like to try out the game for yourself, there will be a link down in the description. There you can go to the store page, buy the game, download it, and support the developers if this is a project you're interested in. You can also check out my Twitch stream. There's about 3 hours of gameplay there if you'd like to see some longer form information on the game and get a better idea of the first few hours of playing it. And for that, you can find a link to my Twitch as well down in the description. Now, before we get any more into what Ostranauts is, let me tell you what it isn't. It is not an action game. Combat is minimal, though present, and when it does happen, it's kind of boring for the most part. There's not going to be a lot of high-octane action. You're not going to be looking out over gorgeous, photorealistic landscapes and exploring cities. You're not going to be drawn into a gripping, well-written, and intriguing storyline with far-reaching consequences. This game is very freeform. The story is what you make of it. Your character is just some person. Though the game also has survival elements, I definitely wouldn't call it a survival game either. So now that you have that all in mind, remember, this is not Dead Space. You will not be fighting space zombies. However, the simulator elements and the low sci-fi threats that exist are very real. To name just a few of these threats, it is quite possible and very easy to blow yourself out of an airlock, set your ship on fire, die of suffocation because the fire burning on your ship consumed all of the oxygen, poison yourself by mixing too much nitrogen into your ship's system, electrocute yourself because you didn't turn the power off before you started removing a component, burn yourself with a laser torch, cut your own limbs off with a laser torch, explode because the fire extinguisher in your hand has caught fire, die of hypoxia because you forgot to put your helmet on before you walked out into space, die of hypoxia because your pressure suit only has a few minutes of oxygen in it, be murdered because you stumbled upon a crime scene, be beaten and dragged away by the police because, well, they're just rude like that, die of, well, starvation because you ran out of money, crash into another ship because you were going too fast, couldn't slow down, and hit the spin button instead of the turn button. Whoopsie. The sort of low sci-fi but high threat theme that this game has going on reminds me a lot of Hardspace Shipbreaker, which is another fantastic sci-fi game that I would absolutely recommend checking out, especially if you like taking apart spaceships. And that's another game where anything can go wrong, and most of it is highly realistic. Now that you have a general idea of all the horrible things that could happen to you while you're playing this game, let's take a look at what you can actually do in Ostranauts. First of all, this is an RPG, so you'll be making a character. And I would like to say that I am in love with the style of this character creator UI. It's set up when you're making your face as a dating profile. There's a few options for everything. It's not a ton. and you're going to see all sorts of randomized stuff on the NPCs that is going to make them look pretty goofy. And then we move on to our career and our history, which is set up sort of in a manner similar to Tyranny, where you make choices, and those choices not only pass time, but also give you traits and money and a few other things to set you up for the start. Now, when you start out, you are age 18, and as you make decisions, you will spend years, essentially becoming older, to gain traits or new skills or to get money or whatever it is you want to do to set yourself up ahead of time. And then of course you can always hit the Seek Adventure button, and this is where the random chance will come in. These events typically have some sort of consequence, but a number of choices that could get you any number of different things, from money to skills to connections, and frankly this is the most interesting part of the character creator. Of course, you can also go to the traits section and spend years to become different from others. You can become stronger or weaker. Frankly, I think that the trait section should be changed a little bit. For something like Project Zomboid and a lot of other survival RPGs, when you take a negative trait, you tend to get a bonus as well. For example, with Project Zomboid, you get more points to spend on positive traits. However, in Ostranauts, you still spend years to get negative traits. Why this is probably just because the game's still in early access. But that's one of the things that I would recommend they change. Additionally, you can spend years to get specific skills. Anything from working faster in EVA suits to expertise with hacking, or stealth, or melee combat. There isn't ranged combat skills implemented yet, but there are the skills to maintain, deconstruct, and repair ranged weapons. Once you've made your character and secured a ship for yourself, it's time to start the game. From there, you will start out in K-Leg, which is an asteroid space station centered above Earth. This is where the majority of people will live and effectively will be your base of operations for quite some time. In addition to being the largest major population center, K-Leg is also important because it's situated right next to the Boneyard. The Boneyard is the massive graveyard of derelict ships where you will likely be doing the majority of your work. So what kind of work are you actually going to be doing in the Boneyard? Well, frankly, that depends on what you want to do. If you want to be an investigator and look for the causes behind murders on derelicts, you can do that and inspect bodies, bring back evidence for a paycheck. If you want to be a courier and fly between points of interest to deliver important packages, you can do that. If you want to be a pirate, rob, kill, plunder, and steal ships for a profit, you can do that too. If you want to be a shipbreaker, and this is largely what most players are going to choose simply because of the theming of the game, then you can fly into the Boneyard, licensed or otherwise, find derelicts, look for valuable parts on those, uninstall them, bring them back to your ship, and then carry them back to the space station to sell for a profit. If you're the industrious type, you can even purchase derelict vessels, or steal them, and then flip them to sell those for a tidy sum. Now that means, yes, you could completely and reconstruct all of these vessels right down to the floors, walls, and wires. If you want to unplug the oxygen tanks to sell them or strip them to bring back to your own ship, you can do that. If you want to take apart a whole chunk of the vessel to reattach it to your ship, you can do that too. As long as you have the skills, tools, and materials to do it, you probably can. And this is where the true beauty of Ostranauts comes in. The game provides a ridiculous amount of freedom to the player when it comes to building, disassembling, repairing, and using parts, materials, and items. You can find everything on these derelict vessels, from hidden stashes of alcohol to free EVA suits to hidden weapons, stashed components, and important valuable parts. In fact, the game offers you so much freedom that it even allows you to break it. K-Leg Station, the largest population center on the map where you start out and most people live, is completely destructible. You can pry open, hack, deconstruct, repair, and destroy items all over the space station. If you wanted to, you could literally walk up to the wall of K-Leg Port, and cut a hole in it. As long as nobody stopped you while you were doing it, anyone not wearing a helmet would suffocate and die. Aside from the basic 9 to 5 and committing war crimes in space, there's actually quite a bit more to this game. If you notice the bars down in the bottom left corner, when I click on my character, there are a lot of meters. Instead of just hunger, thirst, toilet, and sleep, our character has emotional needs as well. So not only do we need to keep our character healthy, we also need to keep them at least remotely happy. And by doing that, you'll have to socialize, they'll have to find personal space, they'll have to keep up with their family members to a certain degree. Effectively, every action you take will have some impact on their mood. During combat, for example, getting hit and fighting for long periods of time will not only make them tired or cause pain, it'll also make them afraid. So, to repair that security status, they will need to find somewhere they feel safe or talk to someone like a security guard. You might be thinking to yourself, that's a lot to keep up with. Yes, it is. That might be something that turns a lot of players off because this game has a lot of simulation elements and is highly realistic when it comes down to those elements, especially on the human aspect of things. However, the AI is very inhuman. When it comes down to things in this game that need to be fixed, the AI is number 1 and the combat is number 2. The AI will sometimes do completely asinine things, and this isn't just NPCs walking out of airlocks with no helmet on. This is your character suddenly smashing the helmet you just spent an hour repairing with a fire extinguisher, and you have no idea why. Somebody please tell me why my character started smashing the helmet that I spent so long repairing with a fire extinguisher that I just found. Come on, man. When it comes to combat, it's not bad, it's just uninteresting and kind of uninvolved as well. Effectively, you get a set of moves based on what you're carrying and your character's skills. You select one of these moves, and then your character performs that action. Then your opponent does the same thing, but everything's in real time, so this sort of turn-based picking what you're doing doesn't really add up sometimes. It's also really hard to tell what your opponent is doing sometimes. There are different moves like tackling or blocking or dodging, but some of these things don't really tell you the difference between them. For example, if you're wielding a knife, you can either stab or slash. I know from experience that stabbing penetrates armor, but the game doesn't tell you that. Unfortunately, social encounters are set up roughly the same way, so you often find yourself just letting your character auto-socialize because it's extremely boring to use the same social move 40 times over 20 or so minutes. The other really unfortunate thing is each of these moves will increase one stat and decrease another. So there's no way to really get all of your stats up by socializing because you're going to be decreasing another one at the same time. To give an overview of how I feel about Ostranauts, personally, I really like the game. There's a lot to love about it, especially if you're the type that likes low sci-fi simulators in this kind of universe. The world building is fantastic, the graphics are all great, I love the style of the UI. There's definitely some things that could be streamlined though. Not only is the game very buggy, since it's still in early access, but some of those bugs will be game breaking. Additionally, the time in the game is set to 1:1, so 1 second in real time is 1 second in the game. You can change the speed all the way down from 0.5 seconds per real second up to 16 times. But again, if your character needed to sleep 8 hours, you would have to sit there for 8 hours unless you sped it up. And even if you do speed it up 16 times, that's still quite a bit of time. Fortunately, everybody starts out as an insomniac, but if you weren't, that could be a serious issue. If you're a fan of something like Hardspace Shipbreaker and you enjoy low sci-fi simulations with shipbreaking or salvaging or shipbuilding, then definitely give this one a look because this one checks all of those boxes. That'll do it for me though. I'm the voice in your head. Thanks so much for listening, and you'll be hearing from me again real soon.